Official welcome. We are exploring history and becoming us, or US. We'll have to explore that very intentional name. And so I welcome everybody to our webinar where we've got some wonderful content to share. My name is Wendy Amato. I'm the Chief Academic Officer at WorldStrides, and it's my pleasure to be here with you, Orlando Serrano. Would you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about your role.
Sure. As Wendy said, my name is Orlando Serrano. I am the managing, the person who manages the teacher and education programs at the National Museum of American History, and part of that entails developing resources for educators to use.
We're grateful to have you share expertise. You and I both have worked together before, and we know that one of the things we share is a commitment to making sure that educators have incredible resources for working with students. And tonight we are not going to disappoint, but we've got a lot to share.
To deliver.
Can you, well, let's take a tour and just talk for a moment about what we are exploring today. We've got a pretty focused agenda. We're going to get right to the good stuff. We want to talk about how the program came to be, and we'll explore that name too while we're there. But most importantly, we want to spend some time on your website, which has been carefully developed, and make sure that we have an understanding as educators of how to use the resources that have been prepared. So that is the plan, and we'll jump to it. Tell me a little bit about becoming us, or becoming US. Where do we start there?
Absolutely. Well, as you all can see, we have a James Baldwin quote there that actually our new director quoted when she first began in January. It was the quote that she left us with on a video that she recorded for us. And in our education department, we had already been using it. And really, it gets at the fact that U.S. history is complicated. There are some moments to celebrate, there's some moments to pause and think about more thoroughly. And it's broader than we'll ever fully know, but we're going to do our best to create a more inclusive and accurate history. And that's really what becoming us, definitely a play on words, that it was built on the idea of bringing in more stories that perhaps we have not known, some events that we have not focused on, so that we can be more inclusive and accurate in our history.
It's a challenge in the classroom, making decisions about how you use your time and what you can share with the students. This is great, and thinking about how to incorporate additional perspectives is good. When you want to make some changes but don't exactly know how to get started, then a conversation like ours tonight is very helpful. I'm speaking for a lot of teachers. I'm looking, and I've got folks from coast to coast. I'll say hello to Bowling Green, Kentucky, Connecticut, North Dakota. We know Will, California, Texas. I've got lots of states in, and I'm happy to see everybody. As you enjoy the webinar with us, please don't hesitate to ask questions or share comments and feedback. If there are things that you're looking for, then be sure to let us know. I'll keep my eye on your contributions throughout the webinar. One of the things I noticed is we've got the US that's capitalized, but also I don't know if teachers have taken some time to look at the word becoming.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And really well, I mean, I actually heard a really interesting podcast where folks talked about Michelle Obama's memoir that just came out, talking about becoming, because it hints at a state of perpetual creation, which is really what we are getting at with the resources as well, that we are in a momentary stasis, right? This is the United States, but we're always moving towards a new direction and forward. And we are intending for the suite of resources to continue to grow as we get more themes that we'll get into in a little while. Because, yeah, we are in the process of being and becoming something different all the time.
I love it. Well, wonderfully named and inspiring for us to take a look at what it means. Let's talk a little bit about Many Voices, One Nation.
Yeah, so this is one of our larger hallmark exhibits at American History that opened 2 years ago, and it really is the inspiration for the resources that we developed. The 4 guiding questions or themes, tropes, if you will, that set up the exhibit are that some of us came here voluntarily, here being the United States, some of us came here against our will, some of us were already here, And some of us happened to be brought into the country as it started to move westward across what we now call North America.
Yeah, borders changed.
Borders changed. Borders changed. And so it's an incredible exhibit, and in the process of putting the exhibit together, the education team, before I was here, decided to start putting sort of companion resources to go along with the exhibit that educators could use. So that is where Becoming Us comes in.
So the Many Voices, One Nation exhibit that's here has grown, probably by teacher request and educator demand, and the resources then complement the exhibit, but also make it accessible.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yes, it is definitely a way for for educators to bring the Smithsonian into their local school sites as we push this out digitally, because we can't be everywhere, unfortunately. Even though I do travel to teach teachers around the country, I can't be everywhere all the time. So yes.
Okay, this is great. Let's look a little bit more. Maybe some more details about the Many Voices, One Nation exhibit and what people experience here that will help us as we prepare to look at what's available online.
Yeah. So as you can see here, a couple of the objects that are on display really get at the different kinds of stories that we wanted to tell when we think about what U.S. history means. The fact that migration, that's the lens that we looks through in these resources. Everybody moves. We really wanted to focus on the fact that folks have moved to the United States, but within the United States as well. We have stories of multiple great migrations from the south to the north, from the center of the country out to the west, back down to the south more recently. And if you see here, that is the Tomato Statue of Liberty. By an artist, Kat Rodriguez, who she put that together when the Immokalee Coalition of Immokalee Workers was building off of the work of the UFW in California, the United Food Workers, to push for more fair wages for folks working on tomato farms in Florida. In the back, behind a couple of the folks who are visiting the exhibit, you see the hood of a lowrider. Yes. That is from Los Angeles. And one of the cases in the exhibit focuses on different neighborhoods and ethnic enclaves within different neighborhoods, and that one happens to focus on Los Angeles. So those are some examples of the stories that we're trying to bring into the story of the United States.
Excellent, a lot to see. Let's talk a little bit about Americans All. What do we have here? We've got a little more opportunity to peek into some things that are on site here.
Yeah, this slide is really starting to get at the way in which we started to imagine how the resources would be used and the types of voices that we wanted to incorporate in the resources. And so it's, you see pictures of diverse communities here. Yes. And we'll get at this in the structure, but each of the resources, there are 5 major components, 5 major themes, and each of the themes has 3 smaller case studies. And we wanted to get at some of the stories that aren't told, that they've been hidden for whatever reason.
They don't typically make it into the curriculum.
Yeah, and some of those are young people. We see young people down here making music in one of our art labs that is part of the Hirshhorn Museum in Smithsonian, and so we definitely wanted to include youth voices, and we do, to, again, inclusive, yes, in time and in demographics, but demographics, that includes young people. Oftentimes we don't think about what young people have done to shape the country.
And what a nice way to get the attention of the young people in our classrooms is sharing stories that are maybe from people their age. So let's talk a little bit more specifically then about Becoming Us and what we're going to see here. Sure. You mentioned themes and cases.
Well, this is the mock-up of the landing page for the website, and really it is organized around 5 major themes that, again, were drawn out of those 4 driving forces for the exhibit. That some of us came here voluntarily, some of us came here against our will, some of us were brought into the nation as it was growing, and some of us were already here. And the 5 themes that we settled on are borderlands, education, policy, belonging, and resistance. And we'll flesh that out in a little bit.
Okay, those are beautiful themes. Those of us in education can already imagine how robust we will find the resources to be. Let's look a little bit more specifically about how you all made some choices for what to include.
Yeah, so we definitely wanted this to be research driven and
definitely
and feasible, right? So we did a state-by-state study and analysis to see how migration or immigration was being addressed in the particular curriculums. And then we also worked with our affiliates to see how able they would be to partner with us to push some of these resources out to their local school districts and support educators, you know, at on-site training or to house us. Like I said, I travel around the country doing this. So how willing would they be to work with us? And, you know, some of the results that we found were unsurprising, but we had to do the research anyway.
Yeah, well, I always appreciate when the offerings come as a balance of requests and interest and research first. Let's see, you did investigate themes first. You were wanting to explore what kinds of topics have been historically presented in the social studies state standards, and you had some good findings.
Yeah, so if
what did we learn?
If you look at the data here, this is out of the 50 states, we organized the curriculums that we found, or read, I'm sorry, and pulled out any themes or lessons that were related to migration or immigration at all.
Yes.
And so you'll see there that westward expansion was almost in all states curriculums, as was early 20th century European migration, and the migration debates that have been happening since 1965. However, in less than half of the states, we talked about slavery as forced migration, or we didn't think about the West Coast immigration that was happening in the 1900s, and then migration between the Great Wars, which again, I was hinting at. You know, I remember, even when I think about my own grade school time, right, I learned about the Harlem Renaissance, but I didn't learn necessarily how workers from the South, why they moved up to places like Harlem that then created these, you know, communities that created the art that I was studying.
That's great. I think your studies were more recent than mine. What we can see from this incredible bar graph is really a tremendous disparity in the way the topics are explored. And so maybe one of the great responses here in the work that you are sharing with us is a way to balance out a little bit. So I'm grateful for that. Let's take a look at how you involved the teachers in making decisions for the.
Absolutely. So we did pilot some of the themes first. So we had to prototype and test to see if these 5 themes were going to work, and we had to winnow it down from 10 to 8 to eventually 5. So that was the first step that we took, and we did that by meeting with folks here in the building, in classrooms, having sessions with students and teachers. We also worked with experts in the field, so some of the folks who are behind the C3 framework, some of the NCSS themes that we also employed in our development, we consulted with them. We consulted with folks over at NMAI, that's the Museum of American Indian, because they took on a similar task to work with indigenous people's history in the United States. So we consulted with them to see how we could build off of their work. And then we have asked teachers to use it in the classroom, give us feedback on the lessons, on the primary sources. We're actually in another phase of testing right now, as we will see the development site in a little bit, but that's the website that the teachers are seeing right now to give us another round of feedback.
I know, we're getting a preview tonight. I'm so excited about that. But what you're telling me is that a lot of very careful work has been done to make sure that you all went for quality over quantity. And by filtering down to offer the 5 themes that you've selected, you really are addressing a need in the education community.
Yeah,
that's a lot of work.
Yeah, we're taking the teaching cycle very seriously, where we teach, we assess, and we look at the assessments and what do we need to reteach. So we're trying to model best practices that we ask educators to use when they're trying to teach a standard. We're trying to develop these resources, so we're constantly iterating as well.
I'm going to ask if for those of you who are joining us in the webinar, can you offer some feedback? I would love to have the Smithsonian hear how appreciated that kind of careful work is, and maybe a word or two about what it means to you in education to have the confidence to access resources that you know have been carefully selected to meet your needs. So if you'll take a moment and share some feedback there, we'll be able to offer that to you. And so let's jump in and take a look more specifically at the 5 themes that you've prioritized for this round.
Yeah, so again, after working with educators, experts, students, these are the 5 that we settled on. Mm-hmm. We take each of these 5, they're divided into 3 case studies.
Let's take a look at how that works.
And so this is really sort of the architecture of the intellectual architecture of the website and our thinking behind it. So we had borderlands, belonging, and so on in the previous slide, and then within each of those units we have case studies, 3 different mini units, 1 to 2 day lessons that can be used all together or independently of each other, and each of them include primary sources, object analysis, and work on developing civic skills such as deliberation, discussion, thinking about root causes and how they're tied to contemporary issues.
This is educator language at
Very
its
much
finest. There's no mystery here about who your audience is and what your goals are. This is purely educational. Okay, 5 themes, and then in each of the units there are 3 case studies, mm-hmm. and then we're going to look specifically at one and get a closer understanding. I think you had selected belonging for us to look at this evening.
So again, if we break down and sort of get into what this actually might look like, in the larger theme of belonging, we have a hidden history, as I mentioned earlier, which is Mexican-American repatriation in the 1930s. Mm-hmm. We have racism and removal, incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. That's the most well-known. And then to make ties to contemporary issues, we address Islamophobia in post 9/11 United States. So in each of these case studies, we have different communities who are, struggling, wrestling with either on their own or because of larger, social factors during times of crisis, and trying to figure out how they belong, where they belong in the larger body politic, during times of crisis. So we've got the 1930s, that was on the heels of the Great Depression. We've got World War II, and we've got a terrorist attack, right, that happened on U.S. soil. So how does who belongs to this country stretch, contract during times of crisis?
Yeah. And if I understand what you shared with me previously, each of the themes has different cases.
Correct. So
it's not that the cases have been interpreted through different lenses. It really is a wide assortment. And in this deck, we're talking about 15 cases, 3 for each of the 5.
That's correct.
With the instructional materials built around.
That's correct.
Oh, we got to go to the website and take a look. Well, look, I think we have one more item you wanted to tell us about first, and it's the educator support. It's that surrounding information. Let's know what we're going to get into here.
Because we know that we're asking teachers to push a little bit on what history instruction might have looked like before. We know that some teachers might be having conversations they've never had before on topics they've never had before. We wanted to make sure that they're as supported as possible. So we created a glossary of terms that they may or may not be familiar with. We'll go over that and see what that looks like. Some key dates and milestones. So events, legislative acts that are important in the history of migration and immigration in the United States. We are in the process of developing 2 videos that are geared towards helping teachers develop norms that will allow them to have the kind of environment that is brave enough and secure enough to hold some of these conversations. And then an essential understandings guide, which is looking at the 10 themes of the NCSS through the lens of migration, and really, again, get at the intellectual backbone of the work that we did.
I love it. So it's anchored in some familiar elements for educators, and the tools are intended to boost some confidence and ensure that good resources are being explored. That confidence piece is not small. For teachers to bring in new material to the classroom, I think that's a gift to the students and to the educators. it's good for us
We're
to model
trying,
lifelong
Wendy.
learning.
Yeah, we're trying.
And it's probably a good thing to encourage teachers to think about modeling that for students, that you have to be proactive in exploring different perspectives, in intentionally looking at other people's perspectives, and not always staying right in the lane.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, there's a lot of research that's done around the importance, or the merits, I should say, of teaching literature and having students read fiction, and that it builds empathy because you're reading about a story from someone's perspective, which is not your own. And we really sort of brought that approach to these resources as well. We
Moving
know
it into nonfiction.
Yeah, exactly. We know that these events happen, but what did these events look like from the perspective of folks who didn't necessarily want to be here, but were brought here, or who saw the U.S. being built or becoming, as you mentioned earlier, all around them, because they were already here. So that's really what we wanted to get at here.
I like becoming also because if we use it as an adjective and we talk about something that is becoming, it's attractive.
Absolutely.
And I think there's some beauty in celebrating the rich history of our country. I'm going to switch us over, if I do it successfully, I'm going to toggle us to your live website. And I say live, but we know that it's, let's see. We've got a demo site up for your teachers right now. Is that right?
Yes.
Let me just get here. If I can do it just right. This is when educators humble themselves to make sure that, we can't be too confident. We have to make sure that everyone knows that we have to mess around with the technology too to get ourselves where we want to be. If I do this right, I should bring up your page here. Okay. And then teachers, if you can just message me please on the chat and let me know that you can see Becoming Us. If you see the landing page, then I'll know we're in the right spot. Someone let me know that we've got the right thing showing. Oh, good. A screen of yeses. Terrific.
All right. So
what are we looking at?
Absolutely. So this is our main page, and a little bit about the launch date. It will be launching at NCSS in November.
And you'll be there?
I will be there.
Okay.
I will be there all 5 days. So
perfect.
Yeah, I'll be in Austin eating tacos. And so this is going to go live November 21st. We've got some background information. We are really happy about the site. We like the colors. We really believe that it gets at.
It's carefully designed.
Yeah, and so I mentioned the 4 themes that guided the exhibit development. These were the symbols that were used. So this is, some of us were already here before, as the United States was becoming. Some of us came here voluntarily. Some of us came here against our will, and some of us were just engulfed in the movement of the border as it was stretching out towards the Pacific. But I want to go up here.
Yeah, will you take us to the top of the page?
Absolutely.
Because I would love to show the way the 5 units are, where we would go to see those.
So we showed you that belonging has Mexican repatriation, which you'll see right here, Japanese incarceration, Islamophobia. These are the different case studies that are nested under the other themes.
Yes.
And in each of these cases, we've had a longer historical case study, one that we maybe not that familiar with, and then a contemporary issue that has to do with that theme as well. So I will go to belonging.
It's really important for us to think about that. So just before you click, I'll point out to everyone, Orlando noted for us that we've got the 5 themes, and that's what you see in the 5 graphics there. Within each theme, you have 3 unique cases, and those are titled under the themes. So just to give the overview, and we're gonna go in and look at belonging, which is what we previewed on the slide also. So now you're gonna see it live, and be assured that the resources are really there for you.
So this is an introductory matter, again, addresses what belonging means.
Nice overview.
In each of the different instances. As you can see, we're really behind the scenes because these black boxes there are 2 images that we're trying to still secure the rights for.
Perfect.
So the material is there, we're just waiting for the images, which is again.
So just a reminder, Orlando is giving us a preview of the site as it's moving into its final touches for its upcoming release. So don't worry if you see a box. That's just right, actually.
We'll go into racism and removal to show you what a particular case study would look like. You'll see here, it shows you how much time it should take, in a day, the grade level, the historical era that it's working with. Here we have the standards because, we know that we have to let administrators know that we are addressing standards in our classroom. So this lets you know that Common Core standards as well as the C3 dispositions that are being addressed. Below you have key terms and concepts that are addressed in the lesson, the essential questions that guide it. Yeah. Here again, we are in development. We have a subtitle that we need to copyright.
We'll give you that. For all of us who have written lessons, we know it's constant.
And so you'll see down here, this is a warm-up. Lets students, educators know what is expected in the warm-up, some teacher tips on how to facilitate that. I'm going
to pause you 1 second. As you all are listening, please feel free to write some questions. I will ask Orlando questions as you send them in. And so if you see things that you'd like to ask about, I'll keep my eye on the chats coming in.
We have the readings that are pertinent, the more materials that are there. And when you go into primary source lab, these are the primary sources that are involved in this lesson. But then below everything, you'll see we have partnered with Skilda and Learning Lab to house all of the materials that are alluded to within the lesson plan. They're all in a particular collection, so you can download these as PDFs to have if you're not going to have a one-to-one situation in the classroom, or you can push these out using Google Classroom to your students if that's something
really
you use.
Flexible.
Yeah, so everything is there. We are the other missing piece in addition to those images that we're still working on are the student-facing documents.
Great.
So anything that a student might need, a graphic organizer.
You're making it easy for us.
We're trying, because
there was a question that came in.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
already have people ready. A question came in, thank you, Megan, wanting to know when the site goes live, will there be some kind of notification, or is the date firm?
The date is firm.
You're going to be at the conference, so we're going to come find you and make sure. Okay.
I will be there with postcards also to hand out, so to remind folks of the website. So if you see the URL up here for the folks who are tuning in, the website
development site.
It's the dev site, but if you can bookmark it, it's americanhistory.si.edu/becomingus. That will be the homepage. And if you click on that right now, actually there's a holding page that lets you know it's coming up soon.
Okay. And you all have my email address. Also, you'll get a thank you for being with us on the webinar. So I'm happy to stay in touch also.
And then I'll just go over a couple of the resources. I mentioned the glossary here. So for example, we've got just it says abolition, right? Affirmative action, the differences between African American, Black, African diaspora, Afro-American, because again, we understand that we're asking educators to have conversations. Maybe they know the material, maybe they don't. I know I had to learn a lot.
It offers some consistency in the way the language is used and ensures that that's aligned throughout the lesson, the material. That's great.
Another, the essential understandings that I alluded to earlier. So looking at culture, again, these are the NCSS themes, and there is no single American culture, language, or narrative. American cultures have always been dynamic and changing, family relationships, community. If you look at the NCSS standards, this is the same language. If we put on the lenses of migration, what would these standards look like? That's what these are.
Okay.
And then lastly, I alluded to the timeline. So it looks like this. You're able to download it as a PDF. On the website, it will look like this.
The materials are attractive also. As teachers, we want the materials that we share with students to inspire them.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking the time to make attractive materials too. I had a question come in asking about the grade range that's being supported by these resources. We saw on the screen that there was a recommendation for the length of the lesson and a target grade level. More thoughts about that?
So right now, for the most part, they're middle and high school target age range. We just brought on a new staff member who is going to be working on figuring out ways to get some of these issues across.
Some variations.
Yeah, for primary grade levels, in particular, probably 5th grade. That's a lot of the states we've noticed teach U.S. history in either 4th or 5th grade. So we are going to be working on developing or translating, I should say, these resources for younger audiences. We also just got funding to translate them into Spanish. So we're very excited about that as well.
I don't even have to look at the screen to reinforce on behalf of all the teachers that many grades would appreciate having the resources, and I will speak for us in saying start with what's here and use your best judgment as a teacher. You know your students, you know your learning objectives, you know the background knowledge and the funds of knowledge that students are bringing to your classroom. So start with what's here and make the adjustments that you need to. With the starting point is solid, and that's not always the case. So we'll start with what we have. Is there anything else you want to show us here on the website?
No, I think that's good for now. I mean,
Looks great.
That's just, the structures are the same. The resources, again, they're all right there. I will say this, the glossary right now is only going to be available for download for a little bit.
Sure.
But eventually it will, it'll have A through Z, and the A's will open up like accordions, like the warm-up did that we just showed.
Okay.
So that all the A terms will show up and you can collapse it and then B.
Well, the glossary is going to be super helpful, but probably the case information and the
More important
resources
right now.
bundled together are what people are going to really be inspired to start with. I think that looks good. There was a question asking for the exact site, and we'll be able to send that out in our follow-up email. I'll make sure that we include that, and then we know the date again.
November 21st.
Okay.
November 21st.
It's coming soon. We're just a month and a week away. If I do this right, we're going to toggle over and come back to an invitation to take questions and comments, and we can explore those for just one more minute here. I can't believe how quickly our time goes, but also you and I are both happy to follow up as needed with additional questions, even a phone call if someone would like. So here's your chance if you want to send in something. Fifth grade, please. This is great. There's some question about differentiation. You made a comment about one-to-one for technology. So if we could talk another moment about technology. You've said that the resources can be downloaded. So a one-to-one is not a requirement for using the tool successfully.
It's access to computers is not required. There are also teacher tips in several of the lessons, if not all of the lessons, most if not all of the lessons, on how to either translate or differentiate some of these tasks for English language learners, for students that might have different learning needs. There are ways to extend some of the tasks and activities that we have put into them or shorten them. So there is manipulation that educators can do with the resource that we put together. I don't know if it was a very brief display, but on the website for belonging, there were 3 boxes with 3 different case studies. There's an empty box for a 4th, and in that slot is where we're going to put in ideas for differentiation. So it is something that I'm a former classroom teacher. I understand that oftentimes we find resources that are great, but we need ideas on how to adapt them and make them useful in our classroom. So we're doing our best.
Well, I'm gonna whisper that as an invitation to all of us to offer some suggestions. Absolutely. Because as a community of educators, we have great experiences and tools and students communicating their needs to us. So maybe we can help fill in that to be built space with suggestions. Our students range in readiness, interest, learning profile, affect, and so there's a lot that we can customize in a lesson to meet the needs of our learners. So we'll do that. Last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, thank you all for hearing about some of the work that we've been doing. I'm happy to share it. And as you mentioned earlier, more than happy to answer questions over email. Please feel free to share my information. I do answer my email. I have a goal of inbox 0 all the time.
He's raised the bar on himself. I'm going to just pop back to the title slide that has your name, and then we will make sure that people can find us on our respective websites. But I also am happy to answer questions and make sure that we continue to share this kind of valuable information with teachers. I want to offer a hearty thank you to you, Orlando. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Likewise.
I'm grateful that you were kind enough to give us a pre launch preview of the site. The resources look wonderfully curated, selected, arranged. It's clearly a valuable offering to educators, and I feel super special being able to share it tonight.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Orlando. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again for more education opportunities. Becoming Us. You will want to enjoy that, and big thanks to Smithsonian. Thank you, everybody.